He's a man who has challenged those in charge, gone to jail for his beliefs, and always been there in the fight for democracy and change in Kenya. But it's also a story of things that haven't happened, leaving many wondering if the hope he gave will ever really make a difference. This video looks at the complicated story of Raila Odinga, exploring why he's been around so long in politics and looking closely at the difference between what he says and what regular Kenyans experience. We'll look at his main promises, from the economy and healthcare to fighting corruption and making things fair. By doing this, we want to understand why things haven't turned out as expected and what that means for the people of Kenya. Raila Odinga learned about politics early on. His father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was a big deal in Kenya's fight for independence, and later became the country's first vice president. This definitely shaped Raila's life, putting him in the middle of politics from a young age. When he was young, he protested against the government and was put in jail for 6 years without a trial. This didn't stop him, it made him stronger. When he got out, Odinga kept speaking out against the government and eventually had to leave the country and go to Norway because it was too dangerous for him to stay. In the early 1990s, many African countries started having more than one political party, and Kenya did too. Odinga came back and won a seat in parliament in 1992. He had different jobs in the government, but he wanted bigger changes for Kenya's politics and society. This led him to start the Orange Democratic Movement, a political party that became very powerful. Raila Odinga's campaigns have always had big speeches and big promises. He has always said he's the one who will bring good things to regular people, a good economy, fairness, and an end to corruption. His message has been popular with millions of people, especially the poor, who see him as hope for a better future. Odinga's campaigns have been good at understanding why Kenyans are frustrated. He has promised to make things cheaper, create jobs, make healthcare and education better, and fight corruption. People cheer when he speaks, showing that he understands what they want. But big promises can be tricky. While they make people excited, they also make them expect a lot. The big question about Odinga has always been, can he actually do what he says? Many people criticize Raila Odinga for not making things better for Kenyans who are struggling. They say that even though he made promises, many people are still poor, can't find jobs, and things keep getting more expensive. Odinga's supporters say he hasn't had enough time to do what he wants. They say he was only in government for short periods, often sharing power with others, which made it hard for him to make changes. They also say that corruption and bad management from earlier governments made it difficult for him to succeed. But even those who really support him find it hard to ignore that things haven't gotten better for many Kenyans. Rich people are getting richer, and poor people are getting poorer, and many feel left behind. Because these problems haven't been fixed, people don't trust him as much and think he might care more about power than helping people. One of Raila Odinga's biggest promises was about healthcare. He had a plan called Babacare, which was supposed to give everyone affordable healthcare. This got many people excited, especially poor people who often can't get good healthcare. Odinga said healthcare is a right, not something special, and promised to make it a top priority. He wanted everyone to be able to see a doctor without going broke. The plan included building more hospitals and clinics, training more doctors and nurses, and making medicine cheaper. But Babacare has had problems. People say it wasn't planned well and didn't have enough money. They say that the government raised taxes to pay for it, which made things even harder for people who were already struggling. Corruption is a big problem that has hurt Kenya for a long time. Raila Odinga has always said he's against it. He has promised to stop the people who are corrupt and make sure they can't get away with it. Odinga's supporters say that he's serious about fighting corruption because he's even criticized people in his own party. They say he's tried to make the groups that fight corruption stronger so they can go after important people who are doing bad things. But others say Odinga talks about fighting corruption more than he actually fights it. They say that there are still big corruption problems even when he's in charge. They think he only goes after his political enemies and ignores corruption in his own group. Changing the Constitution has been something Raila Odinga has talked about a lot. He's said for a long time that Kenya's Constitution, written in 2010, needs to be changed. Odinga thinks the Constitution gives too much power to the president, doesn't give enough power to local governments, and doesn't fix old problems. He wants to change the government so it's run more by parliament, give more power and money to local governments, and let regular people have more of a say in how things are run. Odinga says these changes are important for making Kenya fairer and more democratic, but other politicians don't want to change the Constitution. They think Odinga just wants to change it so he can have more power. They think his ideas would make the president weaker, make the government messy and ineffective, and cause problems between different groups of people. Building things like roads and bridges has been a big part of Raila Odinga's plans. He says that building these things is important for Kenya's economy. Odinga wants a modern Kenya where it's easy to travel and do business, and where people live better lives. His supporters talk about when he was prime minister and started big projects like the Thika Superhighway and the Lapset project. They say these projects show that he has good ideas and wants to make Kenya a powerful country in the region. But others say that these projects had problems with corruption, cost too much, and weren't done openly and honestly. They talk about projects that were never finished, which cost a lot of money and didn't do what they were supposed to do. They say he focuses on big projects that help his friends instead of spending money on important things like healthcare, education, and clean water. Raila Odinga has always talked about fairness and equality. He's spoken out against discrimination and unfairness that still exist in Kenya. Odinga has fought for the rights of women, young people, and minorities. He has promised to fix problems with land ownership, make things more equal between men and women, make it easier for everyone to get education and health care, and make Kenya a fairer place for everyone. Odinga's supporters think he's a leader who can fix past problems and build a better future for everyone. But others say he doesn't do enough for fairness and equality. They say that there are still a lot of poor people, inequality, and discrimination. They think he talks about these problems but doesn't actually do anything to fix them. Raila Odinga's career shows how tough he is, how he can change, and how many people still support him. He has changed Kenyan politics a lot, but people don't agree about what they'll remember about him. His supporters see him as a fighter for democracy, someone who speaks out against unfairness, and a leader with good ideas for a better Kenya. They think history will be kind to him and remember his sacrifices and how much he cared about Kenya. His critics think he's someone who divides people, hasn't kept his promises, and cares more about power than about helping people. They think he's an example of someone who could have done great things, but didn't. Only time will tell what people will think about Raila Odinga in the future, but one thing's for sure, he's had a big impact on Kenyan politics, and that will continue for a long time. The things he promised to do but didn't are a reminder of the problems Kenya still faces and the need for leaders who can do what they say they'll do.